Funerals Market Order 2021 was published on June the 16th, and it contains a lot of detail. Please take a look at the order and the explanatory note and familiarise yourselves with the details. There are some areas where further clarification is needed, and we have asked the questions to the CMA, and we will provide you with guidance and templates as soon as we can. The deadline for compliance with the price transparency aspects of the order is the 16th of September. So please use this time, these few months, to get your heads around the requirements and to make the necessary arrangements. Next slide, please, Deb. So why are the CMA doing this? So through the recent review, the following problems were identified. These are described by the CMA as AECs, or adverse effect on competition. They were as follows: low levels of customer engagement caused by the very understandable and challenging circumstances for people when purchasing a funeral, the lack of easily accessible information on products and services in a format that allows people to compare like for like, the lack of visibility to customers of the level and quality of care given to the deceased, so back of house. And the CMA also identified problems with competition within crematoria services. It's not easy to open a crematorium, and there's a wide variation in how much choice consumers have. Next slide, please, Deb. Okay, so the CMA committed to a package of remedies to address these AECs, and they are: firstly, the CMA is requiring all funeral directors and crematorium operators to disclose certain price, business, financial and commercial information to customers. Crematorium operators are now required to disclose certain price information to funeral directors in the local area and other funeral directors upon request. There will now be a prohibition on all funeral directors from entering into or conducting certain arrangements with third parties such as hospitals, hospices, care homes or other similar institutions which could give them any preference over other funeral directors, and also soliciting for business through coroner and police contracts. Next slide, please, Deb. So the deadline for this is the 16th of September 2021. Effective immediately is the ban on entering into any new contracts or agreements with care homes and hospices, etc., and all existing arrangements must be wound up by the 16th of September. Next slide, please, Deb. So, in addition to the remedies just discussed, the CMA also made a recommendation to the UK government and the devolved administrations in Northern Ireland and Wales to establish an inspection and registration regime to monitor the quality of funeral director services. And that was the first step in the establishment of a broader regulatory regime for funeral services in the nation. The UK government has already responded to this and will reserve the right to revisit this recommendation in time. In the meantime, the CMA board will actively monitor market outcomes in the sector, will publish an annual review and will consider at the earliest opportunity whether to consult on a future review of the sector. To assist the CMA in monitoring the sector, it will require some funeral directors and all crematorium operators to provide it with specific information on the goods and services they provide to customers. Next slide, please, Deb. So, the order was published on the 16th of June, so that is the starting date. Some of the measures come into force immediately. Some, such as price transparency, have a 3-month implementation period and a deadline of September the 16th. So does it apply to my business? Yes, this is a UK-wide order. It applies to all funeral directors in England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it also applies to those companies that offer funeral services through a third party. Next slide, please, Deb. So what are the requirements? The requirements cover transparency, price, terms of business and disclosure of interest. They prohibit certain practices and place a duty on funeral directors with 5 or more branches to report certain information to the CMA. So first, commercial information and transparency. There's a requirement on all funeral directors and crematorium operators to disclose price information to customers. This is part 2 of the order and the deadline is the 16th of September 2021. I'm going to keep saying it over and over again, 16th of September. Article 3 requires a funeral director to offer the CMA attended funeral, and if a customer wishes to purchase an attended funeral as described on the standardised price list, the funeral director must supply it to the customer. However, there is an exception for funeral directors who only offer unattended funerals. They are not required to offer the CMA attended funeral. The funeral directors must supply the following in branches and on their websites: the standardised price list, the additional options price list, and the price information provided to them by crematorium operators. This must follow the exact format detailed in the order, depending on services offered. The funeral director must also display this list in the window of any branches, where practicable. On a website, the standardised price list must be in PDF form. It must be titled Standardised Price List, and it must be displayed on a page no more than one click away from the home page. It must be clear and prominent. If a funeral director does not have a website but uses other online outlets, they must display the standardised price list and the price information from crematorium operators in a clear and prominent position on those other platforms, and that includes social media. The standardised price list and the price information of crematorium operators must also be supplied in a physical copy to anyone who is unable to visit the branch and who does not have access to an online platform. The additional options price list must also be made available in branch. A funeral director can offer other products and services provided they are on the additional options price list. They can also offer bespoke or alternative products not on the additional options price list, but only after prices have been disclosed to the customer. If crematorium price information is not available to the funeral director at the date the order applies, they have a further 15 days to publish that info. There are very specific size requirements for both the branch window and the in-branch displays. Inside a branch, the price information, terms of business, and the disclosure of interest must be displayed in an area frequented by customers and not, for example, behind a counter. Schedule A of the explanatory note details the minimum standards expected, including the spec of the coffin and other suitable facilities, appropriate, fit for purpose, normal for industry standards, etc. Next slide, please, Deb. Okay, there is a requirement on all funeral directors to disclose particular business, financial and commercial information to customers. This again is part 2. The deadline is the 16th of September, and this information must be displayed in branch and on the website and on any other platform. If a funeral director does not have a website, it must disclose its interests on any other channels or platforms from which it markets itself. Where a funeral director discloses its interests on its website, they may choose to disclose interest on any other online channels, but they are not required under the order to do so. So the terms of business that must be displayed are as follows: the size of any deposit which is required, the times by when any deposit and final balance must be paid, the options, including interest charged, which a funeral director offers in respect of payment, and any charges which the funeral director will make for late payment. Ultimate owner of the business must also be disclosed, along with any business or material financial interest the funeral director has in a price comparison website. The funeral director must also keep and display a register providing details of any material charitable donation or payment of a gratuity to a third party, or any other form of payment to a third party that does not relate to a cost incurred or a service provided. Material means any individual or cumulative payment to the same third party of £250 or more within any 12-month period. Gratuity includes a payment or tip given to third parties. And third party means a party connected to the funeral sector, such as a hospital, hospice, care home, provider of bereavement services in a hospital setting, or provider of palliative care or any other similar institution. There are very specific requirements for the contents of the register, which must be published on the first working day of October 21 and updated every 6 months. Funeral directors are not required to disclose on the register any charitable donations to third parties not connected to the funeral sector, such as a community group, a school, a local sports club, any donations made by their employees in a personal capacity, or any charitable donations collected and or processed by a funeral director on behalf of customers. Next slide, please, Deb. Okay, prohibited practices. So effective immediately, a funeral director is prohibited from entering into any arrangement with another party which could encourage, incentivise or require that party to refer custom to the funeral director or give that funeral director preference over others. Funeral directors are also forbidden from soliciting for business through coroner and police contracts. This is part 3. No new contracts can be entered into from the 16th of June, and all existing arrangements must cease by the 16th of September. Arrangement means contractual or non-contractual relationship, exchange of services and gifts. Another party means a person in a position of trust providing goods or services, including but not limited to hospitals, hospices, care homes, and providers of bereavement services in a hospital setting or providers of palliative care. For the avoidance of doubt, this is detailed in the order. Arrangements that are not included, actually, this isn't in the order, this is in the explanatory note, my apologies. The avoidance of doubt, arrangements that are not included include commercial arrangements between a funeral director and the institution to collect and transport the deceased and the training of third-party staff by a funeral director. Next slide, please, Deb. So, to assist the CMA in monitoring the funeral sector, there is a requirement on some funeral directors and all crematorium operators to provide the CMA with specific price and volume information on the goods and services that they provide to customers. This is part 5. And this is due the first working day of October 21. Funeral directors operating 5 or more branches or 10 or more branches must supply the CMA with information to allow the CMA to monitor market outcomes. The information must be provided separately for each branch and in aggregate form for all branches. The funeral director must also account for any variance between the total number of funerals, the total revenue, and disaggregated information. Funeral directors operating fewer than 5 or fewer than 10 branches can also be ordered by the CMA to make information available. If a funeral director opens a branch or branches that results in it operating from 5 or more branches or 10 or more branches, it must notify the CMA within 28 days. Into enforcement. So, a funeral director operating from 10 or more branches must supply the CMA with a compliance statement on the last working day of April 22, confirming compliance with the requirements from the day each of those articles came into force to the 31st of March 22, and then every year after that. A funeral director operating from fewer than 10 branches must supply a compliance statement if requested to do so by the CMA. If a funeral director is aware that they are not compliant with any part of this order, they must report that non-compliance to the CMA within 14 days of becoming aware. Okay, I hope that's clear. Next slide, please, Deb, and over to you.
Thank you, Rachel. Just excuse me while I share the slide again. Just bear with me just one moment. Right, can everyone see the presentation still?
Yes, we can, Deb.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you very much. Okay, what do you need to do? So the NAFD has put together a package of measures to support members across the summer. You have until 16th of September to comply with the majority of the requirements in the order. And we recognise that for some funeral directors, there will be a lot that you're doing for the first time, publishing pricing online. For some of you, you may not even have a website that you regularly change or adapt. And therefore, there's quite a lot for you to think about. And so therefore, we're working hard to try and make sure we've covered all of the bases in terms of the information we provide. So the action you need to take, as set out by Rachel in the next 3 months, is to complete the standardised price list. And we are providing you with templates. We've got a couple of questions that we are working with the CMA on to clarify, but we will be uploading to the website templates for you to complete. And then once you've completed the standardised price list and got together your additional price options list and the required crematorium information, before the 16th of September, you need to put all of that information on your website. If you don't have your own website, as Rachel says, you can use another service such as Funeral Directory. And for having your pricing on Funeral Directory is now part of the Funeral Director Code, which is a mandatory requirement of membership anyway. And as you'll hear shortly from Stacey, there is a team for Funeral Directory who are waiting to help you to do that. You also need to put the posters and digital displays in your branches, in windows and on walls. So you need to think about print requirements and how you're going to do that. And although the CMA is very specific about the structure of the standardised price list and what you must use, you are at liberty to brand it with your own branding or to use an NAFD logo. You should also read the CMA's requirements in detail on the prohibited practices and further information that Rachel outlined to make sure that you know which bits of that apply to you and how to make sure you comply. And then, as Rachel said, if you have more than 10 branches, get ready to send your compliance statement reporting form by email to the CMA. So how can we help you? So the first thing you will receive from us is a 4-page guidance document summarising all of this, which is coming to all main offices within the next couple of weeks. Again, we're just waiting to clarify 1 or 2 pieces of information with the CMA, and then it will be flying out the door. The same information will be a cut out and keep guide in July's Funeral Director Monthly. And then we will also be making sure that it is on the NEFD website on the page that we've created. That will also feature all of the links you need, all of the summary guidance, all of the downloads and templates. In addition to this initial webinar, we are also working to secure a date with the CMA to present directly to you and answer your questions. And over the course of the summer, there will be other webinars and videos that we will publish to make sure that we're providing you with all of the information you need. For example, a step-by-step guide to how to upload your information to Funeral Directory. And then also working closely with the SQMs, we will be phoning all members across the summer to offer our help. So you should receive a phone call from us in good time to be able to ask any questions you need answers to and to secure our help. If there is something you need urgently, then you can call us at any time, of course. So just a reminder, you need to be compliant on or before the September the 16th, but you have until then to comply. So our strong advice is to spend this week really getting to know the order and reading the information to make sure you understand what is being required of you and by when. And then as the information and the templates start to come through from us, you can start putting your standardised price list, etc. together. So a question you might have in mind is, well, what happens if I don't comply with this? Well, the CMA have made it absolutely clear that they're going to be enforcing these requirements. They have a range of sanctions available to them, from reminder notices right through to civil proceedings. And they're very, very clear that they are going to be checking websites, checking funeral home branches. As I said, it's also a mandatory requirement of membership to have your pricing online, and of course to obey with all applicable laws relating to funeral directing. And then, as Rachel said, you do have a duty to self-report possible breaches to the CMA and to rectify, to report them within 14 days of being aware of the possible breach, and to rectify them as soon as possible.